Yeah. Hi, I'm Eliane St. Marie of Parenting for Wholeness, and I work primarily with highly sensitive moms, many of who've experienced trauma, whether they realize it or not. A lot of them actually from childhood emotional neglect. So it's not so much what happened to them, but what didn't happen to them, and who, because of that, the mixture of being highly sensitive and having experienced trauma or emotional neglect, really, really struggle in life and don't understand why. And I was one of those. And I eventually, from not knowing how to deal with my trauma, developed CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, and started learning a lot more about the nervous system and when cell danger response gets activated. And then I kind of mostly recovered, kind of miraculously. And it became really important for me to include some of that information in my program and to share what I had learned with these women, because they're so the same kind of person as me that I could see them going down the same path to where I started calling my program CFS prevention programs. And ironically, through this, I met Cedar, who is a nervous system expert, who also said, unrelated to me, that they called their program CFS prevention, like a CFS prevention program. So that's not why we connected, but it was just one of those little things. And I'm not interested in becoming a nervous system expert. And I wanted to bring that information to my people, and Cedar's awesome. So I invited them to, yeah, share some of their information with my people and see where we go from there. So yeah, Cedar, if you'd like to say a little bit about yourself
Yeah,
and how you came to become a nervous system expert, and a little bit about what you do, how you help people.
yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Eliane. Um, so the nervous system information that I've gathered has mostly been in the last couple of years, and I come at this mainly from a somatic point of view. So that's based in the body. There's a lot of different ways we can engage with the nervous system, and I teach pretty much all of them, but my favorite are the ones that are based in the body. So I am also considered a somatic practitioner, a somatic coach. But yeah, I came to this work through chronic fatigue syndrome as well. It was kind of the culmination of a lifetime of nervous system dysregulation, which I think we're going to talk about. But yeah, when I look back, I can see that even though I seemed healthy and I felt good and I had lots of energy, there were a lot of signs of nervous system dysregulation going back all the way to when I was a child, in particular digestive issues that I had my whole entire life, as well as some mood issues that were really severe in my teens and 20s. So, I was able to overcome those specific problems, but I still had this underlying nervous system sensitivity or dysregulation that, with enough stressors and enough triggers piled on, turned into chronic fatigue syndrome, which could also be called the cell danger response, or at least we'll get into how those two things are interconnected and related. And then I got myself out of it. I completely healed from chronic fatigue syndrome last summer. I've been backpacking, I've been traveling around Europe, I've just been having an absolute blast. It feels so good to have my health back and to actually have a whole different level of health
Yeah.
than I had before. And just like the ease of existence now when with my nervous system in a state of safety and in a state of like rest digest most of the time, it's like, oh my God, those little things that used to just set me off, or that day-to-day sense of frustration and impatience is just gone. I'm so much more in my body. Everything is just so much easier. So that's what I really love to provide people. And I do largely work with folks with chronic illness at this time. But I am starting to expand my practice into people who maybe don't have a full-blown chronic illness yet, but they can see those signs of stress and they can tell that, they're kind of heading down that road. Because I would love to, prevent anyone from having the 5+ years of
Yeah,
disability that I
that's
had.
so where I'm at. That's why
Yeah.
I'm like, I see all these people, and that's part of it is like now I see everything through that lens, and people are telling me about I have these symptoms and I have these struggles, and I'm like, cell danger. It's like it's not about fixing that and I see everybody like pouring so much energy and time and seeing all these specialists and healing all these individual
And
conditions.
then it pops up
And I
somewhere
feel
else.
like it's like there's such a more direct and efficient, like I'm all about efficiency. I'm like efficiency is like a huge thing for me. Like I can't stand it. And I just wanted to provide a resource where they could see it. So yeah, I would love to have you talk about like what are some of the ways that it manifests when you
Mm,
have an activated cell danger response. So I know a big one is like CPTSD is essentially that. It's like you're like you become sensitized to all kinds of stimuli,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, that is one of the things is that you'll notice sensitivity to sound or to touch. Our pain receptors get reset so that a lot of sensations that maybe weren't interpreted as pain previously now are interpreted as pain. So we get a lot of chronic pain syndromes coming out of it. It can also manifest emotionally, so with experiences of anxiety, overwhelm, depression, those types of things. And then really common one, like I mentioned, is digestive issues. The digestive system just gets really deprioritized when that's happening. And then also issues around detoxification. So sensitivities to mold, MCAS is another common one. Immune dysfunction, so that can be autoimmune or just like catching every bug that comes around. Or the other big one is inflammation. So the cell danger response, a lot of our body's defense mechanism is creating inflammation because that actually helps us heal. But it becomes a problem when it just sticks around, and then we have chronic inflammation, and that leads to heart problems, it leads to brain fog, it leads to a whole gamut of issues. So it can manifest in a lot of different ways. And it's funny because I have a lot of people call me and they're like, can I do your program? Will it work for me? I have, and then they list their whole list of symptoms. And I'm like, every single one of those I can be tied back to the nervous system. So I always encourage folks to get checked for other possible contributing factors. But if things are coming back normal, but you still feel terrible, it's probably the nervous system. Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember, I don't know if it was your video or someone else's that lists like all the potential
Yeah, I list all the
symptoms
body
and
symptoms.
illnesses.
Yeah.
Is that yours?
Yeah, that's in my free video on my website, so folks can check that out and kind of
Okay,
see
yeah,
the
so I'll
list of
definitely
body
post
symptoms.
that in the show notes. But
Mhm.
I think it would be really cool to find, I don't know, an article or a PDF or something. Or I don't know if that's something maybe you could create of, because I think there's something about just seeing it in black and white of going like, okay, I have this, I have this, I have this, that might kind of bring it home more.
Mhm.
Because I feel like it's almost hard to believe that,
Right.
wait, really? Like that can't be. Like I've been struggling, especially people who have been at it, like working on resolving, I don't know, SIBO for 5 years or 10 years to be told like, no, it's not about doing any of that. It's about, you know,
Right. And
regulating your nervous system.
it's not that the physical stuff can't help. Often it does. Like we can support our bodies in a lot of different ways, but if you're not addressing the nervous system, then like I said, it's just going to pop up in a new different way. It's not going to completely resolve if you're not getting to that really core issue.
So one thought that came up when you were talking about the pain sensitivity, like it was just we were just having a discussion about that in my clean parenting group where we have some like really highly sensitive, spirited children who will just have like extreme reactions to the most like minor little thing, and
Mm.
they're like genuinely in pain. And then other times they're not. Like the same thing can happen and they're not. So would that be explained by that?
Yeah, it definitely could be because a big part of our pain receptivity, pain is actually an interpretation of sensation. It's not its own sensation. A lot of people don't realize this because if you think about it, there's so many different types of pain, right? Like you could have a throbbing pain, a sharp pain, a aching, or there's many different ways that you can experience pain. This is my cat Sal. Hi Sal. Thanks for being
Sal,
involved here.
gorgeous.
He just likes attention when I'm trying to do other things.
Okay, he can be on the video too.
Yeah,
We're all inclusive here.
yeah. Um, Anyways, so pain is actually a danger signal that is being sent by our nervous system where the whatever the sensory input is being interpreted by the brain as pain so that we avoid that thing. So our emotional and mental state at the time that we're experiencing it has a very significant impact on whether that stimuli is interpreted as pain or not.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of like as we were kind of talking it through in the group, I was thinking, well, like I can't relate to that in terms of physical pain, but for me, like having suffered a lot of depression, when I'm depressed, the tiniest little comment that somebody makes will just floor me. Whereas if I'm in a good place, it's like, okay, that was kind of annoying, but that's
Mhm.
it. So I was like, okay, I imagine there might like it could be the same phenomenon with physical pain.
Yeah, and
So
a lot of
that
people,
it has to do with how you're feeling in your body and your nervous system.
yeah, and like you were saying before, folks don't often understand just the degree to which our mind and body, and particular our emotions, our limbic system, and our body are informing each other constantly. If you're familiar with the vagus nerve, it's the largest nerve in the body. It's a primary part of the autonomic nervous system. We actually have 80% of the information traveling along the vagus nerve is going from the body to the brain, and 20% is going from the brain to the body. So we're constantly in this interchange of information. And based on the information coming from the body, coming from the senses around us, the nervous system is going to prioritize different things. So it's either going to prioritize healing, rest, digest, repair, detox, all of those functions that we need to do. Or it's going to prioritize mobilization, which means we're going to run away, we're going to fight something off. We've got to get all of our, big muscle groups firing and our heart pumping and all that stuff. Or it's going to prioritize shutting down and kind of disassociating. And what is also, if you read about the cell danger response, called sickness behavior. So that's where an animal, such as a human, will kind of remove itself from the group and feel, like I just don't want to be around anybody. The lights are too bright, the sound is too loud. I'm just going to curl up in a little ball and protect myself and kind of wait this out. Because evolutionarily, if someone is harboring an illness and they are just going about their normal day interacting with everyone, they're going to spread that illness throughout the group. So, so evolution has
Wow.
helped us out by giving that person the impetus and the desire to separate themselves, to go just be super low energy, just relax, conserve their energy that's working hard to get rid of this virus or, bacteria or whatever it is. And so much of what we see in CFS correlates really strongly to this sickness behavior where folks are just overwhelmed by sensory input. They can't be around people. It's hard to move. It's hard to do anything. Yeah.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah, that's a piece of the cell danger response theory. Maybe I should
I mean,
talk a
I've
little
heard
bit
of
more about.
fawning and I've heard of freeze, but never put in those terms.
Mhm. Maybe I should
Yeah,
talk a
and
little more
it's
about the
kind of
cell
like
danger
all of my
response.
work is about looking at things from an evolutionary perspective, so it
That's
fits
so
right
cool.
in too. Yeah, yeah. So you were saying maybe you should talk about.
Just talk a little bit more about the cell danger response because a lot of folks might not really know what that means. So this is a theory that comes from Dr. Navio, and his his theory posits that the mitochondria, which I think we all know that's the energy centers of the cell, so they produce ATP, which fuels the cell, and so that fuels all of the body functions essentially in our body. But they also are very sensitive to any kind of changes in the cell. So they are sort of the first to notice if something's going wrong. And they will sound the alarm that there's some kind of threat. And the threat can be triggered by, you know, maybe a virus or an invader. It could be triggered by an emotional or mental experience of stress. It could be triggered by an injury. It could be a lot of different things, but when it essentially when the mitochondria decide, okay, there's some kind of threat that we're sensing here, then instead of going about their normal business producing energy, they actually kick ATP out of the cells so that fuel that our cells need is getting pushed out of the cells as a warning signal to tell other cells, hey, there's something going on, you need to pay attention. The cell walls harden so that a virus or bacteria has a harder time infiltrating. And a lot of other physiological changes happen, such as increased inflammation, and our innate immune response starts up. So that's the non-specific immune response that's also implicated in autoimmune conditions. So all these things happen on a cellular level that correlate quite remarkably with what I was just talking about with the nervous system and the different nervous system states that we can be in. The same thing essentially is happening in our cells, where our mitochondria are saying, hey, we need to deprioritize energy production. That's not as important as protecting the cell, making sure that we're safe, healing whatever injury is here. And I want to share a quote from a scholarly article that I was reading recently that I think puts it really succinctly. When the CDR, cell danger response, is triggered, the priorities of a multicellular organism are reset to optimize survival. These threats can be diverse as infection, poisoning, physical or psychological trauma, and still trigger the same stereotyped sickness behavior. So regardless of the trigger, the cells are going to act like, hey, the body's under threat. And this whole cascade starts, and it doesn't stop until those cells get the all clear signal, until they become convinced that we're actually safe now. So that's the missing piece with folks who end up with CFS, is that they're not getting that all clear signal that the cells can return to producing energy.
It sounds so simple.
It's a beautiful theory, and it ties everything together. Like everything you've ever learned about CFS or, long COVID or fibromyalgia, it just ties it all together into one cohesive theory, and that's what I love about it. It's the one thing that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it's the one thing that makes sense to me for that. Yeah, it's like, I mean, for me, I've suffered from CPTSD since I was 10, and I started actively doing inner work, I think when my youngest was born 27 years ago. And I mean, I did it, it was kind of like my full-time job. And that's how I became a healing coach, also a somatic healing. So maybe that's part of why we're connecting, probably. We have that same kind of focus to it. Um, but I mean, as intensely as I worked on myself, I was still not getting through it. Like I was not getting to a place of healing. And then I also realized I probably had CFS since I was 16, like mild versions of it, but then probably more moderate. But I just thought I was depressed or I don't know, just lazy or whatever it was. What was my point about that? Oh, that yeah, so it's not until I kind of like understood CFS last year through Raylan's group and starting to find the information and really understood about the nervous system that it's like I could continue doing like similar healing work, but it was way more targeted to feeling safe.
Mm.
And it's like I have goosebumps just saying it. It's like CFS and understanding like the cell danger response and all of this. It's like it finally provided me the formula to finally heal the CPTSD, which at the rate I was going, it's like I was seeing the decades passing me by and life passing me by because I was depressed increasingly more. At this point, it was probably like 80% of my life. And I wasn't seeing an end in sight. It's like like I couldn't have worked any harder.
Mhm.
So it's like understanding that cell danger response and how to work with the nervous system and how to create safety. It's been my savior. And yeah, like you, it's like what I'm experiencing now is like, well, just today, what I was sharing with you, like, it's like these things that to me have been like, I would prepare for months to try to have a conversation with somebody on something. And today, like, three of them are happening without even thinking about it. I'm just like writing the whole thing and it's done. And it's like, what just happened? And it's because like all this shit is gone that
Yeah,
was paralyzing me, and I'm able to be like who I really am. Like at my core, I am
exactly.
an expressive, confident person. It just got so squashed in me, and I didn't know how to pull myself out of it. Or I was gradually, but so slowly. So anyway, I'm just yeah, I'm such a what's the word? Uh I can't think of the word. My memory's not all the way back from CFS. I still can't find my words at times. Advocate. I'm such an advocate of like understanding this because it's
Mhm.
the shortcut. Like for so many of the people that I work with who struggle, it's like, yes, some of them, and they do recover from working with me and doing like the somatic approach and a lot of inner child healing and just the safety that I provide, which I think is really healing, like having that sustained support. But it's like understanding the nervous system and the cell danger response will so fast track their journey.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be pushing you on everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look, I found that I just look at everything from a nervous system perspective now, and so many things that were like really confusing or hard to make sense of or hard to work with, it's just like, oh, well, if we just understand the survival responses at play, then we can work with those survival responses instead of beating our heads against them and not understanding why we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah. Or dealing with all the symptoms of it instead of the root cause. So
Yeah.
you just get limited results from it. And the thing is that once you really understand it and heal it, it's like what's possible on the other side of it. And I tell people that all the time. I mean, it's not specifically about the cell danger response, but like the program that I do, it's so transformative. And I have people at the beginning write an intention and I tell them, but you have no way of even comprehending what you'll be living at the end of it. Like you
Yeah.
can write what you want, but it's like you can't know the experience of it
Hmm.
when you've never experienced like what it's like. For me, I call it homeostasis, which I guess it's the same when it comes to nervous system, like living that state of homeostasis. I call it family homeostasis. But what happens when like everything flows, when everybody's on the same team, when you're really connected to yourself, really connected to your child, and everything just flows effortlessly and they don't even understand why, but it's because like the foundation is so right
Yeah.
that they're not doing any techniques. I don't even give advice. I just help them establish this really solid foundation. But anyway, that's the point is that Yeah, on the other I tell people, like, you have no idea of comprehending what's gonna be available to you on the other side of it, and it's the same, understanding the nervous system regulation and, like,
Hmm.
really being able to shut down that activated self-danger response, which so many of the people like me, and I think like you, they don't really know what it's like to live without it.
Right. Yeah,
Know,
we've
like, a
been
lot of us are just, like,
functioning.
highly
Yeah.
sensitive, and well, I guess that can get us talking about that, where, like, some of us do know the traumas we had. Some of the us did grow up in, obviously abusive families, or even, like, emotionally or narcissistically, which even though it's more subtle, you still like, you have a lot of concrete examples of it when you start. It doesn't take a lot of digging to start uncovering what happened. But another big thing that for me that I experience and a lot of the people that I work with is at the beginning they say, "Oh, I had a good childhood."
Hmm.
And then as we progress through the program and they start kind of understanding what children need, they realize all that they didn't receive.
Hmm.
And then that's when I start talking to them about childhood emotional neglect, which is basically growing up in a family that lacks emotional intelligence, and like where the parents are not able to emotionally attune to children, and where there's basically not uh, it's like feelings are not talked about.
Right. Well,
So,
yeah, and then there's also the nervous system aspect of that. So when we're children, we have no way of regulating our own nervous systems because our source of safety is our caregiver, right? The only source of safety in our world is our caregiver. So our nervous system is attuned to our caregiver's nervous system and is going to respond. If they're stressed, if they're in a state of responding to threat, whether or not a threat is actually there, if their nervous system believes that there's a threat, then the child is also going to believe that there is a threat. So we might be raised with parents who are incredibly attentive and very loving, but their nervous systems, because of their own trauma, because of their, family's history, maybe ancestral trauma, their nervous systems are in this heightened state of arousal where they're essentially running in a threat response, like we were just talking about, without realizing it. Then the kid is growing up with that as if they're in an unsafe home because their parents' nervous systems are responding to threat and they assume, or their nervous system, not this, none of this is happening consciously. Let's be clear
right.
about that. It's all completely on an unconscious level and it's not by choice. So this is a survival response that we don't get to choose or intentionally decide that we're going to be activated or not. We just have to work with the nervous system. But this understanding, I mean, the cell danger response theory is very, very new. The understanding of the nervous system is very new. So, of course, most of our parents didn't have these tools to self-regulate, let alone to help their kids learn how to regulate. So we grow up with nervous systems attuned to threat, even though there wasn't a real threat in the home. There may as well have been because that's what our nervous systems are primed for and programmed for, essentially.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd never considered that piece. I mean, I was very aware of how, children just reflect whatever the parents are feeling.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a lot of my work with parents is really working on meeting their own needs and becoming aware of what's going on in their bodies and taking care of themselves so that they can live within their window of tolerance. And then the
Hmm.
children's behavior, the children's reactions automatically shift. And again, they're like, I don't understand what's happening.
It's the nervous system. We
And it's like,
mirror whatever nervous
they're
systems are around.
like people say that all the time. I don't understand. Like so many of my situations have disappeared and I'm not doing anything differently. And I'm like, yeah, no, but you're showing up differently. Like
Hmm.
it's not about what you're doing. Like the
Right.
words and the actions are not that much. It's so much more about the energy that's behind it and yeah, the state of the nervous system.
Yeah. I love that you're doing this work, Eliane, because I think that kids are going to be so much better off to have this understanding, or for their parents to have this understanding, that we just, previous generations just didn't have the benefit of knowing about this stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's like my program's very much evolved over the years. Like I keep adding more pieces as more becomes, well, as I learn more, but also just more becomes like when I started the program 11 years ago, does not really talk about nervous system regulation. It kind of
Mhm.
started, yeah, coming up, but
I also just want to
um,
add about nervous system regulation that a lot of people think that means you have to always be in the safety state or the parasympathetic state. But we actually need all of the different nervous system states to be available to us because, if we're going for a run, we've got to get those muscle groups activated. We need some of that sympathetic energy. Or if we want to sit down and meditate or go to sleep, we need some of that shutdown energy. So regulation is really just about, do we have the flexibility to move between those states appropriately for our environment rather than getting stuck in responding to a threat that's not even there.
yeah, or being thrown in it without our
Yeah,
without
being
it being
triggered.
appropriate or
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, all right, let's see my little agenda here. So, yeah, so can you talk a little bit about what's needed to turn down the cell danger response and to live in from a regulated place overall?
Yeah, great question. We need to practice safety because we've been practicing threat for years, maybe decades, maybe our whole life in a lot of cases. So we're incredibly attuned to threat. And that's our kind of our natural state, and that's where we get stuck. So we have to practice safety. And it's not a quick, it's not like flipping a switch, right? We have to just increase our ability to experience safety slowly over time. And the way I like to do that primarily is with somatic tools. So, maybe we even do a couple on this call of just little subtle things that we can do that our body understands to mean safety. So, just practicing those over and over. And then the other thing that I think is important is there are often underlying beliefs that maybe come from childhood trauma or just our families of origin or just our culture, even because there's a lot of toxic stuff in our culture that create stress internally, like either an internal battle, internal feelings of shame or just not being enough, or I have to do this, this, and this, that are going to push you into that stress response, even if you're practicing safety. So that's why in my 5 keys program, I combine both, where we're doing a lot of like deep inner reflection of like, what is driving me and is it serving me? And then at the same time, we're practicing giving ourselves those experiences of feeling safe, of getting to rest, and really like caring for ourselves. So yeah, I think it's just a practice. We have to practice safety over and over and over until that becomes as easy as threat.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one thing. It's my life is so sped up since I kind of recovered that I'm kind of forgetting what I was doing in the fall that kind of brought me to this point. But I remember at some point just like looking in the Facebook group about like all the different things that people were doing to bring safety to their body and like picking and choosing which were the ones that I enjoyed, that I would do regularly, that felt like they were effective for me, and then just doing those like
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly. That and meditation, that was another
Mm-hmm.
thing that for me did help me, even though I resisted it. But I was like, at some point, I was desperate enough that I signed up for a program and she really emphasized meditation. And I was like, well, whatever. I just got to do something. So I'm going to just trust her for the duration of the program and do it. And like this time, learning to do it and to just like access a place that was peaceful
Mm-hmm.
where like my body could then kind of relax because I was not like stuck in it, but could kind of
Yeah.
rise above or around it, like create that space around it where my body could just, yeah,
That's a great way to put it. And there's different programs out there that emphasize different tools. Like you can show yourself safety by imagining yourself in a positive situation that feels safe. So that's very like mentally based, like top down. Similar with meditation by just going into like a meditative state of calm. That can create a sense of safety. Or you can use these body-based tools where you're using kind of like our physical responses to threat and safety to show the body that it's safe, which would be the somatics. So there's a lot of different ways to get at it, and different people are going to respond better to different ones. Like I tried the top down approach and it did basically nothing for me. I mean, I learned good stuff, but it did not. Telling myself that I'm safe and imagining that I'm in a positive situation is like, it feels nice, but it doesn't actually penetrate on the level that I needed it to. Whereas for some folks, that is really effective. So you have to try these different things and just see
yeah,
what works for you.
yeah. I was just thinking I would love to create like a resource with all different kinds of ideas and maybe like categories. Because for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was almost the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but like I'd been doing somatic work for 20 some years. So I can do that in my sleep, you know? But the top down, that was missing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So one was I was doing the somatic healing to clear trauma. So like that was more the focus. But I also did a lot of just somatic tracking and all of that. I did a lot of. Um, but I do remember like reading about, or yeah, it was this one week where everything was kind of coming together, and we're studying Jan Rothney's book.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book club, they were talking about like how to increase your baseline or what, no, how to work with symptoms. And at that point, I was like increasing my walks by 30 seconds a day. So it would be like
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes and then 5.5 minutes. And oh, I mean, I remember when I was able to get to the end of my little cul-de-sac street and onto like this major road, which I normally hate. But I was like, oh my God, I'm like part of the world again. Like cars
Yeah.
are whizzing by, like I'm not a recluse anymore. But anyway, so I would go on walks, or then like when I started having more energy, I started like playing music and just
Mm-hmm.
dancing a little bit and singing as I was cooking. My heart would start racing, my whole nervous system would get activated, and I would just go like, okay, I know this is new, like we haven't done this for a while, but you're okay. Like look around, like you're not doing anything significant. It's just a little bit of movement, and there's music, and then boom, my nervous system calmed down. I was like, how did that just happen? And then I could dance 2 songs. So
Yeah, that's
so yeah, I
awesome.
think it does depend too on what, I don't know, what you need. And I mean, I think that's one of the challenges to it is it does seem like there's as many, I don't know, approaches or solutions or practices.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
think it's
different
good
people
to have,
resonate with different ones.
yeah, it's good, and it's good to have a variety of tools that you know work for you or that work in different situations, and then you can be responsive to what's present in the moment. Like, do I need to do a body scan? Do I just need to do a little bit of deep breathing? Do I need to tell myself a kind message? Do I need to do a 30-minute meditation? Like it could be so many different things, but if you're
Yeah.
responding to what you really need, that creates, I mean, that's a huge thing for creating safety is building that trust with the body of like, oh, I'm listening
Yeah.
to you now. I'm not just going to ignore you.
Yeah. And I do remember at some point reading in the group, something about like at some point it becomes intuitive. And I was
Mhm.
like that sounded like a dream to me, that I would get to the point where I would just know what my body needed.
Yeah.
Like it felt utopic. But then I got it. Then it started happening. And I was like, and then it's like you know yourself on a level that you didn't even know
Mhm.
you could know yourself.
Yeah.
And then it's like taking care of yourself becomes like a non-thing because it's so automatic and organic.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's really, yeah, it's really remarkable. So yeah, I feel like as passionate as I am about telling people that parenting can be easy and just commit yourself to it and you have no idea what's possible on the other side of it. I feel the same way about this. It's like for
Mm.
those of us who suffer from illnesses that from so many illnesses. I mean, even if you're not sure if that's the cause of it, even just going to address this, like do the
Mhm.
nervous system work and address the cell
It
danger
can only
response, you
benefit
have
you.
nothing to
Yeah.
lose.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe your illness is not going to completely go away, but your life will probably be changed anyway from doing
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, I was just on a coaching call with someone recently, and we were talking about this point where when you really commit to healing, and and all of us would say from day one that I'm committed to healing, but there's this point at which you're willing to leap into the unknown and just trust that you know, I'm going to change fundamentally. I'm going to
Yeah.
be a different person on the other side of this, and I can be okay with that. And you don't know what that's going to look like. So it's scary. It's like the caterpillar turning into goo. It doesn't know that it's going to come out
Oh
with
my God, I
wings,
use that
right?
analogy all the time.
Yeah. Yeah,
How shocking, but yeah.
that was the analogy that I gave was like, you just know that you need to create this cocoon and dissolve, and then eventually it'll be time to emerge and you'll be flying around. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it can be hard to take that leap of faith. That's kind of what I try to lead people through in my 5 keys program. Because it only happens when you're ready, but I feel like it took me like 3 years of being quite sick to get ready for that. And if I can shorten that timeline for folks, then that would be great.
I was kind of laughing and like checking on my computer because I literally have a quote on this in the very last module of my program on commitment. And it says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves in too. All
Mm,
sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events, issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamt would have come his way.
yeah, that's
Whether you
definitely
can
how.
do it, whether you can do or dream you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it.
That's a great quote. I definitely had that experience, and it was not very fun at first because it was like suddenly I saw all the things that I needed to do and needed to let go of that I was holding on to, that I didn't want to let go of, and all the
That
hard
whole
shit I was
that
gonna
whole
have to do.
acceptance piece that
Yeah.
is needed.
But once I saw it, it was like, all right, am I gonna cling to these things or am I gonna get healthy? And I chose health, so, and I can be happier.
Thank God.
Yeah. Turns out I didn't need those things so much as I thought I did.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Mhm.
Um, Anything else you feel like my people should know in terms of their own well-being and health, and in terms of their children's well-being and health?
I think one thing I just want to emphasize is to not be ashamed about your nervous system responses. I think it's it's so common for us to go to shame places, especially as parents. I'm not personally a parent, but I see this in other people of, you know, I've been doing it wrong, I've screwed up my kids, or, all those kinds of things. And I just want to emphasize that our survival responses are not our choice. We don't get a say in whether we fawn or freeze or flee or fight. Those are calculations that are made on our behalf without our knowledge, and because it has to happen faster than we can consciously choose, right? If it's going to save our life, it has to happen instantly, right?
Instantaneously, yeah.
And it does save our life. So I really just honor all of these survival responses and all of these survival states. I don't demonize any of them. It's just a matter of getting to know them and befriending them, and then having more agency and choice, because once we understand them, then we can determine, like, okay, is this the energy I need right now? Or is it not? In which case, I'm going to use my tools and I'm going to shift it. And I think that when you start to do that for yourself, it just opens up a lot of possibilities. And like you said, the kids are going to respond to that because their nervous systems are just in lockstep with their parents' nervous systems, essentially.
I really like that. Yeah, I mean, I say it differently, but yeah, I kind of pound that on parents for a whole 3 months, which I think is part of why there's such a transformation. Because for being told for 3 months every day, "No, you're good," like, the only reason you did this is because your needs were not met, and it's just about being kinder and being better at
Mhm.
taking care of your own needs, and remembering you are innately good, so if you react in this way, there's a reason. There's a
Yeah.
valid reason. It just comes from unmet needs, and it's just about taking better care of yourself, not becoming more patient, and not being better at pushing through. Like, forget that shit. Like, I had somebody cry, I think, in my group this past week when I said, "No, I don't want you to be more patient. I want you to learn to be less patient." And it was just like the permission, that
Mhm.
it's like you don't have to keep like muscling through and like
Right.
pushing harder and trying harder to be
Mm.
different. And like, it's not
Yeah.
sustainable and doesn't serve anybody. I mean, of course, it's wonderful that the parents try to do that. Obviously, they're doing it for very beautiful reasons, but the deeper work that's going to bring them like real happiness and that's really going to serve the children is to learn how to interact effectively and yeah, from the right place so that they don't have to be patient because they're just aligned with the children.
Mhm. Chronic
Yeah.
impatience can also be a sign of sympathetic activation as well. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, anything else that you feel like people should know or that would be helpful if you think of who my peeps are?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would say is that we've just barely scratched the surface today, obviously. It's such a deep topic. I do have a video that's about 40 minutes and a PDF guide that talks a little more about the different survival states and how to recognize when you're in one of them, or if you've been in one chronically, maybe for a long time. And that's a free resource. So I would encourage folks to check that out if you think that that might be in play for you. But yeah,
Yeah, and I'll post all that info
right.
in my in the show notes or whatever they're called on YouTube
Mhm.
video comments description. And yeah, I highly recommend that. I mean, if you resonate with Cedar, I know I really, really enjoyed watching that. And then if people are interested in working with you,
Mhm.
can you give them an idea of the different ways that you work with people?
Yeah, so depending on when you're watching this, I have a program that's about to start March 7th that is going to be a really deep dive into those kind of really deep beliefs and programming that can be driving a survival response. Plus, we're going to do a ton of somatic work, guided visualizations. We're going to sing a bunch of songs. It's honestly really fun, but it's essentially how do we access a healing state? So uh, it's going to be a lot of folks with chronic illness, but the program itself is relevant to everyone. So that starts March 7th, and that's going to be a 12-week program that's going to be pretty intensive. And then
And it is ridiculously priced, so
it is
I'm working really
ridiculously
hard
low
on Cedar
priced.
to dramatically increase the price because I think it's just
It,
absurd. So please jump on it if you're interested, because if I
yeah,
have a say, it's not going to be offered at that price again.
it will not. I've already realized the error of my ways. But that's the price for now, so you
Yeah.
might as well go for it if that resonates with you at all, or else, just pay more later. And then I also do group coaching and one-on-one coaching, and that can look like coaching around a specific illness or health situation that you're dealing with, or it can look more generally like a somatic practitioner session, which is where we really work on the mind body connection, which can be really powerful for folks too. So, group coaching opportunities, you're going to have to reach out to me directly to find out, what's available because it's changing constantly. And then one-on-one coaching, I'm just charging $70 for a 45-minute session right now. So yeah, we'll put my contact info and you can just reach out to me and let me know what's going on and I'll let you know if I think I can help.
And can you just say a little bit more about when you say your one-on-one sessions, when you do it more general, the mind-body
Mhm.
connection? Do you want to just describe a little bit like what that looks like?
Yeah. Yeah, so we start those ones I typically work over a period of sessions, like we'll do like at least 3 or 4 together. And we start by just connecting to a resource of safety, whatever that is for you. So finding your unique tool for safety, essentially. And I have a lot of tools that I can share, but what's best is to find like what is really going to resonate with that individual person and like create that feeling of like just being, wrapped in a blanket by someone that you totally trust and love. So we find that, and then once we have that as our kind of solid rock or base to return
Or
to, then we can explore what else is here. What else is here in the body? Are there emotions? Are there chronic patterns of physical tension? Is there trauma? I'm not a therapist, but somatic work can help with situations that were traumatic. So we just gently touch into those and we always are able to return to that state of safety. So it just gives those patterns or experiences a place to relax and often really just unravel and let go. So that's work that I'm newer to, but it's really exciting to me right now. So
cool. Well, yeah. Thank you for explaining that. I feel like it gives a sense of, yeah, what that might look like. And I mean, what strikes me hearing you talking about it is just how gentle it is. Which, I
extremely
mean, you
gentle.
are so like you have such a gentle, I know I keep telling you that, but like there's just something so gentle about your energy. And I know that, like, especially for people who have had a lot of trauma and who have not felt safe, sometimes like they can only handle so much.
Yeah, yeah, it is important with
And like
somatic work
what
to
you
go
provide
slow.
seems like such a
Yeah,
gentle, almost like initiation to doing healing work.
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's a very different very different way of doing healing work because we don't go into the stories. We don't need to talk about what happened or what didn't happen or whatever. We just need to notice what is here right now. And because that's where what we want to change, right?
Yeah.
We don't care about, or I mean, maybe we would like to change what happened in the past, but that's not possible. What we can change is our present moment experience and how it affects us going forward. So that's where the real opportunity for growth and transformation is, I think, in the present moment and in the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I do too, but just from a different angle
Yeah.
or because yeah, I'm like I don't need the details. Like just tell me, okay, I got triggered by this and because this thing happened when I was 10, it's like, okay, that's all we need to know. And then, we can work with that little 10-year-old who got hurt and just
Hmm.
hold space for her and let her feel and love her and take care of her and
Yeah, and creating a space of acceptance. I mean, I think that's another kind of unique thing that I bring to a healing session is I really just accept all the parts of you, even the parts that you don't want to let anybody see because it's so shameful and so scary. Like, I'm freaking loving on those parts. I don't care at all. I mean, like, just to give you an example that may or may not feel relevant, like, I volunteer in a prison and I work with folks, who have life sentences. I don't give a shit what they've done or haven't done in their life. I'm there just to love them and support them. And that's what I'm here to do for all the parts of whoever I'm in front of.
oh, that's really beautiful. Yeah. And it's so powerful, like to have that place of, I mean, again, that's one of the, like when I first started running my program, I didn't understand why people got so transformed by it. Cause I was like, I'm just having them answer questions. Like, I don't understand how it's, people, like I had somebody in the early years say, oh yeah, I was suicidal when I started. Now I'm thriving. And I was like, I don't understand. But over time, I came to understand it's not as much the work, but the space that's provided of just being
Mhm.
loved on and like being like, bring it on. Like there's nothing I can't handle. And I'm gonna love all of it. And I'm always gonna see the reason behind like the beautiful reason behind it. How
Mhm.
it's just like an attempt to meet a need and whatever. And yeah, it's amazing what happens in that kind of space, especially in a like sustained container that I think
Mhm.
in some ways you get even more through a group program
Yeah, I love
than
group work.
one-on-one
Yeah.
sessions. I mean, unless it's I mean, I do have people that we kind of chat all week long, so they kind of have that ongoing thing. But yeah, I do generally recommend that people do a for the same money to do a group program over sessions because there's something about that group container when there's so much safety and
Yeah.
acceptance created that,
And you
and
learn
then
from
it's so
everyone
much
else too. Like you don't like I'm not the only
right.
person with wisdom in the group, right? We learn from
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing is that it's always so much easier to see the innocence in another person.
Mm.
And
Mm.
then you see, okay, wait, if I can tell when this mom is saying she yelled at her child, that she's still a great mom, and there was just a moment that she lost it. Well, if it's true for her, it's probably true for me too.
Yeah,
So there's
exactly.
that mirroring too of, yeah, it's so easy to see the objective truth in another person. And then at some point you start realizing that it applies to you as well, and that can be so healing.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
true.
Anyway, we could talk for hours, but I think this was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful and we can do
Yeah.
it again.
I I look forward to seeing how people are going to react to it. And yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely let
thank you,
us know.
Cedar.
Thanks, Liliane. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.